Okay, joining me today, we're checking in with Tim Russo. You knew him with UConn last year, now the newest assistant at Northern Arizona. So Tim, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
So I want to start looking back, growing up New Canaan, going to Tampa, then to UConn. When did you realize that your path you wanted to get into coaching?
Yeah, so it was probably my sophomore year of high school. My high school coach at the time, had run like some sort of elite camp, and our high school was hosting. So we had, the players in the team, sort of work as camp counselors, and I guess as coaches too. So, like once we got there, we obviously did like the skill work drills and everything that goes along with running a basketball camp. But then he would like
Yeah.
assign us like teams, or I guess give us like certain grades where we could actually draft teams and coach them. So one of the things that we did, or at least that I did, I was given the seventh and eighth graders, which was a good class because you're able to teach a little bit more and they have a little
Hmm.
bit more of an attention span, which was good. So I was able to get my own team, and this is when I was like a sophomore in high school, so I could have been no more than 14. Um, and yeah, I got my own team, and we lost in the semifinals to a bunch of kids who were from Norwalk High School, which is the town over, which I was very upset about. But that was sort of the first time that I sort of got a bit of a sense of having your own playbook and making subs and doing all the things coaches do on the sidelines. So that was probably my first memory with wanting to sort of get into coaching. And I was like, oh wow, like this is fun. And I figured from there that was sort of the route I wanted to take.
So how did you end up at UConn? What was your path like to get there working for Dan Hurley and the team?
Yeah, so it was. I think a lot of it was just luck. But after high school, I knew I wasn't good enough to play at like a Division 3 or anything, so I figured become a manager. Where I went to Tampa, which is a Division 2. They compete in the Sunshine State Conference. And one of their former players, Matt Johnson, who's from Jersey, Philly area, he went to Tampa, but he graduated in 2016, and I got there. I think he graduated 2016, 2017, and I just got there after him. And that was like sort of a familiar face and a name that I sort of just was just thrown around the office just
Yeah.
because my mentor, Justin Pecca, or one of my mentors, he would always tell me to sort of try to do as much as you can in Division 2, but then try to go Division 1. So after being there for 4 years, Coach Pecca was able to reach out to Matt Johnson to get a bit of a scoop on, I guess, the graduate assistants, if you will.
Hmm.
And my father's good friends with Tom Moore, who's one of the assistants there now, who was an assistant for Calhoun when he coached. So a mixture of those two familiar faces and a lot of luck landed me a gig as a graduate manager, which was great, because it was a foot in the door, and
Yeah.
I jumped right into Division 1. I was sort of thrown into the fire, so it was certainly a learning curve, but I'm really glad that it happened. Obviously, I'm really grateful. And yeah, it was just a lot of luck, a lot of luck.
So I've got to ask this because when I've had players on the podcast, they've talked about how tough these practices are that Coach Hurley runs. What's it like from your perspective? You show up to your first practice as as a grad manager there. What's that experience like for you?
Yeah, well, it was a lot different than I expected. He is incredibly passionate and intense coach who gets the most out of his players. He's not afraid to go at you. But my first day, trying to remember, I think it was a summer workout. It was like an off-season workout we had. Um, and a lot of it was just a lot of skill work and stuff, but he was treating it as if we were in practice 75 of the middle of the
Yeah.
season. So, like I think it could have been like Jordan Hawkins or Tyrese Martin, like maybe two or three misses in a row, and he would like and I think he would just start yelling and screaming and just trying to get the most out of them. And I was like, oh wow. And of course, like I had to hustle with the rebounds because they didn't get
Yeah.
the ball on time, or or I guess if coach didn't see that they were shooting like constantly, or or shooting at a faster pace, then I got yelled at. So I think I got yelled at my first time, just not rebounding as hard or as fast as I should have. I think he said, Tim, sell out. Obviously, just me trying to hustle
Yeah.
for all for the loose balls or just trying to get the balls, you know, passed out to them as quick as possible. So that was sort of my first day, but it was just but he's a very passionate coach. He's very intense. He wears his heart on his sleeve, and he's a national championship because of it. So
Yeah.
it was a pretty crazy first day, I guess, my first summer workout, but all went well down the stretch.
I'm going to take a quick break from the interview to tell you about my friends at Martin Russo's Meats. This fourth generation Connecticut family business produces kielbasa, hot dogs, sausages, and deli meats using Martin Russo's very own original recipes. Their products can be found in grocery stores, delis, restaurants, and hot dog stands throughout the state. And if you're looking for your fill right away, check out their retail store in New Britain. For more information, visit martinrossolsinc.com and go support a UConn fan owned business. And now, back to the interview. So for those who are kind of curious about what the life of a grad assistant, grad manager, what those are like, what was your day-to-day like in what you did with the team while you were at UConn?
Yeah, so I think a lot of what I had to do was a lot of managerial duties to start off,
Mhm.
just to sort of earn my stripes and earn some trust amongst the coaches and other support staff. So a lot of it just had to do with cleaning the facility, rebounding constantly, obviously, showing up every day, being attentive to details, make sure everything's like in place, um, and just sort of just being around as much as you can. I think a lot of my responsibilities, again, managerial. So
Yeah.
waters, towels, mopping the floor, rebounding, um, making sure meetings were squared away, make sure everyone was there on time and all that. So a lot of it just had to do with just starting out, and,
Yeah.
as anyone would and should. And that's what I did my first year. And we did a little bit of operations where um, we handled a little bit of sort of like meals and just like,
Yeah.
sort of like miscellaneous things like that. And then in my second year, I was blessed to do a little more film, which was good. I was a little more involved in actual basketball and working alongside Matt Johnson, who was very good to me in my
Yeah.
second year. But yeah, day to day, you get there by 7:30 in the morning. Make sure the facility's clean. Players come in to shoot sort of sporadically throughout the day, so you have to sort of be around and attentive for that. And then the coaches get in, and you're sort of doing tasks for them, whether that be, helping out with a particular like errand they need done,
Yeah.
or just being around just in general. Like you could be asked to do pretty much anything. So, like that could be from helping them like get packets organized for team meetings, or it could be more so just making sure the office is all set, in the conference room where they meet, and make sure all the materials are out in front of them. We did that, and then we had like a summer workout for about an hour or so, depending on how we were going to manage that week. Um, and then guys would shoot again in the afternoon, and then you sort of like same thing. You're sort of trying to find things to do. Whether you clean, organize. You
Yeah.
ask coaches if they need anything for that day or for that afternoon. You might have to help players with certain errands because stores is so small. Like they might need a little more assistance.
Hmm.
Like a little bit more spread out of a town, and with Manchester and all that sort of close by. So you're just sort of there,
Yeah.
and you just pay your dues, obviously, and you earn your trust slowly and surely. But that's what I did, and yeah, that was sort of the day to day, I guess, if that makes
Yeah,
sense.
no, I'm curious. You talk about rebounding. Who was the guy you were rebounding for the most, and maybe who was the guy that was in the gym the earliest or the latest while you were there that you were working with the most?
Um, it's a really good question. There were a lot of hungry shooters. I would say my first year, Jordan Hawkins, obviously, who just got drafted by the Pelicans. My
Yeah,
favorite team, which is sort of funny. Yeah, but he was always in the gym, any time of the day. Uh, he would probably come in probably twice a day too, maybe even three times, depending on how you felt that day. Tyrese Martin was a gym rat. RJ Cole was a big one. That was my first year. And then
yeah,
second year was probably Alex Caravan. He's been great to me over the course of the 2 years. He was a big one. I think of another guy who was like who'd be good. Oh, Joey Calcaterra was a good one. Rebounder for him a little bit. Adama has a great work ethic. I would say those are my top six. I would say top
Yeah.
five, top six.
Yeah. Hey, I mean that's a pretty full gym day in and day out there, guys getting extra work
Yeah,
in.
yeah, it's crazy. Everyone's different too. A lot of the players have their own workouts that they want to do,
Hmm.
or during a particular like team workout, they have a spot on the floor, or they have a particular drill that they didn't think they did properly or as well as they should have. So they'll come in later that day or right after practice or whatever it is, and they'll get extra shots up. But that's a lot of what me and the other managers did. We were just sort of there to rebound and help them get better as much as we could, and we could be rebounding for 1, 2, 3, 4 hours. It just depending on the day.
Yeah.
Um, and then that was sort of the routine. Like you just sort of rebound, like I said, 4 or 5 hours a day, depending on who wants to shoot and when they shoot, and depending on if they have a team workout that day, if we're giving the players sort of the day for them to get their own shots up. It just depends.
Hmm.
So a lot of rebounding for sure, a lot of hours there. So
Well, hopefully you didn't have to try boxing out against Donovan too much.
uh yeah, no chance there. No chance for me. I'm only 5'10".
As you're a part of that team last year, was there a moment that hit you where you're like, "Hey, this team is really good and has the potential to do something really special"?
There were so many great moments from last year. They've had such a wonderful run. I think that's a really good question. I'm trying to think. Um, I think playing against Villanova is always a tough test for us.
Hmm.
Because they're extremely well coached. They have a great culture. And they've sort of had our number
Yeah,
over the course of the 2 years. We obviously had a great game winner in RJ Cole my first year, and then at Villanova, that was a tough game for us because Gillespie caught um, a great wind of just consecutive shots.
yeah.
I'm trying to think, but I would say at Villanova this year, which was I think it was the last regular season
Last
game of the
regular
year.
season. Yeah.
Yeah, so going to the Big East, I think that was sort of the turning point where I was like, wow, like, we could be something special. Just because, I it's never easy playing against Villanova, and I
Yeah.
think going to their place last game of the year, a game that mattered to us, a game that both teams needed. So it wasn't like one of those things where it wasn't like we were playing like a DePaul or someone who didn't necessarily need the game.
Yeah. Yeah, Noah
But
was right on the bubble then.
yeah, so I think just going to their place at Wells Fargo, tough environment. They have a very good crowd, and just for us to sort of handle that storm, going into the Big East, playing Providence for a second time or for a third time, and in that stretch would obviously lead us to a great run. So I think that particular game for me um, it was a great feeling for us. It was a good way to end our regular season. We had a great sort of comeback from that January skid where we lost 6 of 8.
Yeah.
So I think after that sort of skid, we sort of got back on track, and Villanova was just a good stamp just to put us in a good position mentally, emotionally, and obviously physically. Just get us ready for Big East tournament.
What was that tournament run like for you and being a part of, all of that excitement, you get start things off in Albany and just as the team continued to progress and obviously the run gets more and more exciting, but what was that like from your perspective getting to be a part of that?
Yeah, I think the first thing you just sort of got to point out is, as much as we could have beaten Marquette in that semifinal, I think that was probably the best thing for us. Just because, like not only was it like sort of like a tough pill to swallow, but
Yeah.
I would much rather have made our run, than win the Big East.
Yeah.
So I think just being able to look ourselves in the mirror and get ourselves back on track after that game, just sort of move on after that night and just shift complete gears into, obviously the biggest goal, which is to win national championships. So I think just being a part of that run was nothing I've ever seen like before. I've never been a part of or seen a team with that much dominance and that much
Yeah.
poise and competitiveness than this UConn team. Every piece, every person, every coach, every staff member knew their role, and everything just sort of it just flowed so nicely. And you couldn't have done it any better. Um, and like I said, I think that loss to Marquette certainly hurt that night, but like even getting back to the hotel, players are so excited for the NCAA tournament and getting ourselves ready for that. So like even so, like, we obviously would want to win that Big East game and,
Yeah.
go on to play Xavier in the final. But, at the same time, we had such a great run and everyone was just so excited to get, just to get back into competitive basketball. And like I said, it was just such a great run. And I who knew that we would have win every game by an average of 20
Yeah.
points? Like
Yeah.
who would have thought that? So
Did
that
you
just
ever just
goes.
look up at did you ever just look up at the scoreboard in a game and be like, holy crap, we're up 15? Like like this was a 3-point game a couple minutes ago.
I mean, to be honest, no. I mean, like as for me, like I mean, I'm never like sort of satisfied. Like I'm always sort of on the edge of my seat. I'm always sort of jittery.
Yeah.
I'm never the one who sort of looks up at the scoreboard and says, "Oh, we're good." Because in college basketball, anything could really
Yeah.
happen. So,
Yeah, exactly.
I was super nervous every single game, and it didn't matter if Gonzaga we beat probably by 28 points. And I was still nervous until the final buzzer. So, just because I know how competitive Gonzaga has been over the course of the
Yeah.
years with Drew Timmy. So yeah, I never really felt too great during a game. It was always just like sort of just like clanking your fingers together and
Yeah.
just sort of just like oh my goodness, like hopefully that we do all right in this stretch or this segment in this particular one moment before the media, but like we played a lot of great teams, but we were just so dominant and we never took our foot off the pedal, which was just truly amazing to watch.
So looking at ahead a little bit, you come out of that tournament run, and now here you are as an assistant at Northern Arizona. Take us through how that opportunity came and how excited you are to be moving a few seats up on the bench there.
Yeah, I mean, well, for starters, I'm just as shocked as you, as a 24-year-old kid getting his first assistant coaching gig, and I know that Luke Murray especially, gets really mad at me when I say, I'm still in disbelief by it. But it was again the complete luck that I've sort of had. So it was obviously during the Final Four, we were in Houston, and my father, but my mother, one of his good buddies, and one of my brother's best friends, to Houston, to watch us play against Miami, and my father's obviously like a big baseball junkie, so he
Yeah.
wanted to walk around Minute Maid Park, and I think it was Game 3 of the season. I think it was like the third or fourth game of the season. They were playing the Braves at home, and he couldn't believe how many people were outside for some reason. He's just sort of weird like that. So, out of nowhere, he runs into Shane Burkhardt, who's been the head coach here for a few years. I think he took over during COVID. And my dad says that he asked for a picture, but I know for sure that my dad just talked some random guy's ear off and just happened to be whoever he was. So, they get to talking, and coach is like, "So, what are you guys doing here?" And my dad said, "Well, we're here for, our son's is a graduate manager for the basketball team and for UConn, and, we're just here to support." And, they got to talking, they exchanged numbers. And it turns out, Coach Burkhardt was looking for somebody to add to his staff. So, we met up in Houston for about a half hour in between sort of, I think it was
Yeah.
after a shoot around that we had, where I spoke to him for about 30 minutes. We really hit it off. And then I didn't really hear from him for about 17 days because I think that he had a couple turnover with players. I think a couple players that
Yeah.
transferred, a couple guys that have graduated. So I think he was just sort of putting his ducks in a row. Come to find out, May 8th it was a Monday, so he offered me the fourth assistant role, which is I guess a new rule that teams could expedite when it comes
Yeah.
to just sort of adding to their staff. And I was incredibly just like shocked because I didn't think that I would be in that position. I thought he was envisioning more of like a video coordinator type role,
Mhm.
which was probably my next step if we're being honest. Um, and and then a couple of days later, and I get really I talked to my parents about it, and I thought it was a little uneasy because I only spoke to them for the one time in person, and
Yeah.
one of the things I really wanted to sort of dive into is their culture and sort of how they run their organization and all that. So I took it upon myself to go visit him and the other assistant Gary Bell who played at Gonzaga. I visited on the 15th, so a week after he offered me, I had took a visit for 2 days, 15th, 16th, 17th. where I just spent 2 full days with them, talking about culture, getting shown around the facility, the campus.
Hmm.
And every single second I was like, wow, like, this is a wonderful place, like who wouldn't want to be here? And then on the way to the airport on that Wednesday morning, I had like a 6 a.m. flight from Flagstaff to Phoenix. And Coach Burkhardt had taken me. And when we were in the car, I was going to tell him that I was going to go home and discuss financials with the parents and sort of get
Yeah.
myself organized with making this decision. And he said, well, before you do that, obviously go home, but we're going to offer you the third assistant role. And I was like, what? I'm sorry. And I guess they were just totally impressed that I took an initiative to get out there. So I go home, discuss it with the parents, and then give him a call to, I guess verbally accept the job. And he wanted me to come out here Memorial Day weekend to sort of work out with the team a little bit. Work their youth camps. We had a
Hmm.
team camp here as well. Um, and here I am a month later.
There you
So
go.
it's just been incredible, incredible luck. And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention my mom. My mom says that he liked my mother better because she was a lot more personable and didn't necessarily talk his ear off if that was what dad did, which is probably what he did. So um,
Oh,
just
that's
sort of
great.
crazy. Just sort of
Yeah.
crazy.
As you're adjusting to life as an assistant, what do you think is the biggest lesson you're going to take away from what you got to see at UConn with Coach Hurley and the staff that he has there?
Hmm. Another good question. I would probably say, well, I think UConn sort of trained me very well in the sense of long hours in the gym and long hours in the office. I'm sort of used to that.
Yeah.
And obviously every program is run differently, with how they sort of utilize their time in the gym and how they utilize their time in the office. So I'm so used to just being in the gym and office sort of late at night or late, early mornings or late nights. So I think that that's sort of good, just having sort of that
Yeah.
perseverance just to sort of fight through some like those tough times when you have to get up at 5 a.m. For for a 6 a.m. workout, or you have to stay till 7, 8, 9 o'clock at night, going over film, whatever it is. So I think just having that, that sense of perseverance for sure. And I think just really staying persistent. One of the things that I've sort of had to adjust to is like the whole recruiting style.
Hmm.
I've been around it for sure. Like I've introduced myself to families and recruits when they visited UConn, but I wasn't necessarily like a pinpoint person.
Yeah.
Somebody who's like the clear cut communicator with between myself, the team, and the recruit. So that's sort of one of the things that I'm becoming a little bit more adjusted to. Just maintaining that persistence with reaching out to as many people as possible. Sort of pick their brains and obviously to recruits. Like don't be afraid to just give them a
Yeah.
call or whatever. Like obviously permitting the certain guidelines and timelines for sure. But
For sure.
I think just sort of having that perseverance for the hours and sort of the sacrifice you have to make as an assistant, and then obviously sort of having that persistence, with in coaching meetings, just being persistent on a particular subject, or during a workout, being persistent on a particular drill, and then in recruiting, being persistent with coaches and players' parents and players themselves, and just try to have sort of that sense of urgency. So I think those are probably like the two or three biggest things that I've sort of taken away from UConn.
All right, I've got some fun ones here to wrap things up. But I think one of my favorite parts about college basketball are the atmospheres in the arenas. Where was your favorite place that you went on the road while you were with UConn?
Hmm. Again, another good question. Another great question. Um, I probably have two great. That's another. I would say when we played Auburn in the battle for Atlantis in the
Oh yeah,
Bahamas over Thanksgiving, my first year, we beat Auburn
that
in
was
that
double
game. I think
overtime
in
or
overtime.
triple
Yeah,
overtime.
Jordan Hawkins.
Yeah,
Yeah, it was double overtime. Jordan Hawkins at 16 points. And I think Dama had 30 points. I think that was probably the greatest win on the road or like a neutral site that I've been a part
yeah.
of. I guess if we're talking about a Big East opponent, I would say playing at Xavier is probably the toughest gym to play at, just because their gym is so compact, but it has sort of like that modern romance about it, where
Hmm.
everything's sort of up to date with equipment and in the court and all that. And obviously our bench is right behind the student section. So
Yeah.
like when you see me doing the stools, like I'm also sitting right in front of the students, which is just like a small barrier between me, the cooler of the
Yeah.
waters, which I always had to refill, and then the student section. So it was, I thought that was probably the toughest Big East opponent, and then the neutral site. I think the Battle for Atlantis was, was incredible too.
All right. Yeah, I know you mentioned in saying your dad likes to talk people's ears off, and for those who don't know, dad obviously Chris Mad Dog Russo, Sirius XM WFAN fame there. Who's got the better rants? Dan Hurley at referees or some of your dad's, greatest hits on radio?
Oh, geez, there are. That's close. I mean, I think, I think Coach Hurley has become a lot better with staying poised. Because obviously you still have to work with the refs, and
Yeah.
during games, like you just sort of have to deal with them. My father doesn't really care. Um, for those who want to know, probably I think his biggest, or I think he had two good rant. The two rants that I liked was when he was with WFAN with Mike Francesa. He had a rant about the Giants of baseball who couldn't win, and that was
Yeah.
when he was like a really avid fan. Um, Probably back in the early 2000s, I think it was. And it was right when WFAN had partnered with Yes, and were on TV. So if you go on YouTube, look up my dad's rant about the San Francisco Giants. That was a great rant. I think my father also had a great rant about Pac-Man Jones, who played for the Bengals, I think it was. That was another good rant. And I think whenever he talks about me, is always sort of a pain because I think there was one time when I think I had like a nice heart to heart with him about like sacrificing, and I think it was in my first year at UConn where we were
Yeah.
sacrificing or like our first jobs or whatever. And he was saying that, my first job was a volunteer graduate manager for UConn, which is great. But his first job at 23, 24 years of age was, I think, at a gas station like a local stop in Slauson, New York. And I thought it was a really nice conversation, like him and I, doing classic father son, bonding. And he goes on his radio show. He says, "Timmy, you are working at a Division 1 basketball team who's on the way for history, and I was working at a gas station pumping gas." In his nice Long Island accent, just thick in the microphone, and he just started screaming. And I was like, "What the hell is going on?" Like, I thought we had a nice conversation, but he used it as clickbait, which I got a lot of traction for it, I guess. But I think those were the top three if I had to say.
Hey, no press is bad press there, right? Like you'll
Yeah,
take it.
right. Yeah,
Um,
100%.
I know one thing he's been known for now that he's been on First Take. He's a big fan of Bob Cousy. Does that run in the
Oh,
genes there? Are you preaching Bob Cousy to today's
oh,
players?
I love Bob Cousy. All the players at UConn made fun of me for it for 2 years. Bob Cousy, as much as people hate to admit, because he played in the 50s and 60s, he has six championships. He has an MVP in 1957. He played with Bill Russell. He had 29 assists in an NBA game. I mean, granted, he didn't shoot above 40%, but at that time, they didn't have the resources, sort of the budgeting, the equipment that today's players use or
Yeah.
have sort of the luxury of just sort of playing basketball every day. Back then you didn't have the luxury of playing basketball every day. Some of the players had to get second jobs. And I know that sort of stems on the idea, well, players today couldn't, or players back then couldn't stand a leg in today's game. And I say, well, that's sort of unfair because you have, like, as much as you really can't compare eras, my best way of looking at it is who dominated their era better. And Bob Cousy, for as old school and as again, Luke Murray would hate me for saying this, but as transcendent as he was, you can't take away the fact that he was one of the founding fathers in the NBA. He played with Bill Russell. He's won a million championships, six, I think it was, and he was the Houdini of the hardwood. As much as people hate me for saying this, again, Luke Murray, he was sort of the first point guard to utilize the fast break. And granted, Red Auerbach was the first one to sort of utilize the fast break, and Bill Russell would block shots to teammates instead of blocking out of bounds like Wilt used to do. He would sort of block the teammates so they could get out in transition. So Bob Cousy is sort of the first guy to sort of have like that flashiness about him when it comes to sort of getting your team out in the break, making a flashy pass. And, there's a reason there's a reason
Yeah.
why people do what they do now for the flashy passes. And I'm not saying Bob Cousy invented a flashy pass. No, people probably say Pistol Pete uh, for the Jazz at that period of time.
Yeah.
But I'm a big Bob Cousy fan. I think in a documentary about Bill Russell. He was 93. He was 93 years of age now, and he's incredibly sharp. But I'm a huge fan of Bob Cousy, and
All right. So
um,
it runs in the genes there.
oh, for sure, for sure. Those old timers are how peace my heart all the
All
time.
right. All right. We'll have to get you versus JJ Redick now, and we'll see how
Oh,
that goes.
no thanks. You got that one.
I'll wrap with this one. Having been around the UConn team so closely over the past couple years, as we look towards next year, who are you most excited to see kind of take that jump in their game and go to the next level of the guys returning?
I mean, I think the obvious answer is probably Alex Caravan and Donovan Clingan. Those are sort of the two guys that know the system, like
Yeah,
the back of their hand. They were key um, key parts to last year's run. Alex Caravan obviously being a starting forward for us, who had a tremendous freshman season, who probably should have won Big East Freshman of the Year over Cam Whitmore, and then Donovan Clingan, having a wonderful season as well. Sort of being sort of the second head of the two-headed monster that was Sonogo and him. Just in the paint, blocking shots, just having such an active presence defensively, especially. I think those are the two guys that you really want to see sort of make a huge jump. I think Alex probably averaged maybe 9.5 to 10 points a game, and I think Donovan probably averaged 7.5 points a game. You would love to see those numbers jump. Obviously, it's not much of a statistical game,
yeah.
I guess, as it used to be, and especially in college, no one really has crazy averages. But I'm a big fan of those two. They treated me with the utmost respect, and I really want to see them sort of do the best of the ability to lead that UConn team because we had a lot of obviously we had three players going in the draft.
Yeah.
And we have a lot, they have a lot more young guys. They have Stephon Castle, they have Jaden Ross, they have Solomon Ball, they have Jalen Stewart, they have Yusuf Sigar, they have Cam Spencer they just got from Rutgers. Like they
Yeah.
have a lot of new pieces who don't necessarily know Hurley's sort of style of coaching and the system that he wants to run. So I think that having those two glue guys in AK and Donnie, I think those are going to be two dependent variables they're going to need to have play well and play at the highest level of basketball so the team runs smoothly.
I like it. Well, Tim, I really appreciate you taking some time to come on, look back at your UConn days, look ahead to some NAU time. I know you're going to have some Lumberjack fans out here on the East Coast. So best of luck out there, and we'll have to have you back on later on once you've gotten a little bit more settled into your role.
Yeah, for sure. Again, thank you so much for having me on. I'm still getting used to it, a month in, but all is well, and I can't wait for this sort of next step here.
Awesome. Well, thanks again, and best of luck.
Thank you so much.